Guys, this is not clickbait. This has been one of the strangest games ever in the history of the World Chess Championship matches. And it's not just me who says this. Anish Giri, for example, one of the top grandmasters in the world, a guest of my podcast, has said precisely that. And all the commentators, I've watched many broadcasts in different languages. I speak English, Russian, for example, German, and they were like, what the hell? What the hell is going on? This is very strange, but very entertaining. Let me show you the game 3 between Gukesh D and Dean Liren from the Singapore title match. Let's go. Fasten your seatbelts, guys. So we have a relatively like standard opening. Queen's Gambit declined, and you might remember that in game 1, Gukesh, playing with the white pieces, sensationally lost after going e4, e6. This time he decided to change his arsenal of weapons, and he went for d4, which is more common for him. So obviously Dean was ready, played very solidly, because Dean is leading in the match. He has a 1-point lead. He's fine with the draw, obviously, especially with the black pieces. So the position is very dry, and g6 is a very common move. The idea is to go bishop f5 and attack this queen and make white lose a tempo, because white wasted one move moving the queen, and after g6 and bishop f5, white will have to waste another move to move it yet again. But this also has some purpose. So okay, g6, h3. h3 is a rare move. Most people here, of course, play the logical bishop g5, but h3 has been played already. And actually, it has been played by a guy who is called Vladimir Kramnik, also a guest of my podcast. You might have seen the episodes with him. It looks weird, but it has some stain, as you will see later on. So bishop f5, logical, goes for the queen, queen b3. Now, if black has to react somehow to the threat on this pawn, and b6 is a weakening of the position. It's already much better for white. You don't usually want to break this pawn chain. So black should either go queen c7 or queen b6. Black went queen b6 here. If black goes queen c7 here, it's also alright. The engine says it's around equal, but there is a crazy line with bishop f4 attacking the queen. The queen takes the bishop, and now queen takes b7, and this rook will fall, but the engine says that black has some compensation, so I will not go into the details, but you can research this line. It's fascinating. Queen b6 is what was played, very logical. Of course, white does not want to trade the queens here, because this would allow for the opening of the a file for the rook, and black is already a little bit better. So this is like a staring contest. White does not want to take to open up the file for the black rook, and black does not necessarily want to take as well, because then this rook gets active. Even though black sometimes does want to take, because these two pawns are isolated, so they are not as easy to defend as the black pawns here would be, because they stand together here, these pawns, B and C and D pawns. And if we trade the queens here, these pawns will be isolated and they will not have any protectors. But this happened in the game, so you will see what happened next. So g4. g4 obviously is the idea behind the move h3. White wants to kick this bishop off this diagonal. Nice diagonal for this bishop, and white wants the bishop to go back, for example, to e6, where it will be passive, and white will enjoy some slight positional advantage because of this bad bishop that's seen its own pawns. But there is an important variation that probably was prepared by Gukesh. Queen takes b3, takes, and now the bishop can go to c2. This is a square where it's, well, I wouldn't say comfortably placed, but at least it's posing some threats. It wants to take this pawn. But there is always a trade-off in chess when you make some enticing move. Well, not always, but very often. You occupy a promising position, but you take some risks, because this bishop might get stranded on the edge of the board. For example, here white ignores the threat on this pawn whatsoever, goes bishop f4, developing the bishop, and white says, take this pawn, I don't care. And the problem is that it's not a good decision to take it. And this exact position happened in the game a year ago between Vladimir Kramnik, playing with the white pieces, former world chess champion, and Arjun Erigaisi. By the way, they're both guests of my podcast, so combo. And Arjun took this pawn and he suffered for the rest of the game. I think he drew that game, but he was losing because knight d2. And if the bishop goes back, then rook c1 and the bishop has no squares and it will die. Well, bishop e4, then f3, and all the squares for the bishop are taken by white's, are controlled by white's pieces or pawns, so the bishop dies. So of course, once you take on b3, knight d2 forces bishop c2, c4. Otherwise, as I showed you already, this fails. The bishop will get trapped, so bishop c4. But then there is, for example, knight takes here and e3, and this pawn will fall. Because if you go b5, logical move, defending this pawn, it doesn't defend anything, because you can, at the very least, take on b5. And if you take bishop g2, and this bishop is a monster, and it will take the rook, and white is winning already. So, of course, after takes e3, Arjun did not go for b5, but he still got a bad position. I don't remember what happened in the game, probably this and this. And white has a two bishops advantage, white has a great file for the rook, and white is +1. So this is what would have happened had Dean been greedy and taken this pawn. By the way, do you see that already it's Gukesh has not spent practically any time, and Dean has spent half an hour. This is an important factor, time factor, that will play a role later on, so stay tuned. So bishop f4, by white, second the b3 pawn, but this b3 pawn is not, it's not advisable to take it. But if you do nothing, if you go, for example, a6, because what's the threat of bishop coming to f4? To take this knight, and the rook will take, and then this rook will take on a7, the pawn is hit. So if black reacts like in a natural way, like a6, black is in trouble, because knight d2 now seals this prison, this tomb for the bishop. The bishop again has no squares to go to. If it goes to e4, again f3 wins the bishop. And white just wants to go rook c1 and take this bishop and snack on it. Of course, black has g5, pawn sacrifice to escape with the bishop to g6, but black is down a pawn now. So it's not good. So a6 is obviously a bad move. And here Dean entered into a long thing, and he found some crazy top engine recommendations. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this. So he went h5. The idea is to pressure g4, obviously, and this rook will get active. So for the time being, this pawn is hanging. And actually, I wouldn't even think about h5. I was looking at the position and I thought maybe knight e4 is a logical move. And actually, it's one of the good moves according to the engine, but h5 is stronger. It poses concrete questions. And Gukesh immediately, well, in two moves, immediately made a mistake. So first he went rook g1. Logical move, overprotecting this pawn. Now, the rook on h1 was vulnerable because black is threatening to take, and you cannot even take back because the rook would be hanging on h1, so rook h1 is very logical. But now takes, and another great move by Dean, knight d7. He spent half an hour. Again, he's down 1 hour, but he found the most precise move. Knight d7, he's developing. Now there is no longer a threat of bishop takes b8, rook takes, and rook takes this pawn. So this is the idea of this move. But also this idea is that it's strengthening this knight, and you are preparing to develop, and there are many other ideas. And actually here, yes, black's bishop is still a little bit clumsy here, but white cannot do anything to take it. So white goes knight d2, trying to entomb this bishop. Again, this pawn is now defended, and white wants to go rook c1 and takes this bishop, but rook g8, another great move by Dean. So the idea is that if rook c1, then g5 attacks this bishop and gives this bishop route to go back. And if white takes and trades these bishops, then this pawn is hanging 2 times and defending just 1 time. So black can take, and this is a completely equal position. Even maybe a little bit more pleasant to play with black, because white has these stupid pawns, doubled pawns. So Dean has come up with a very creative idea. I wouldn't have found it over the board, but he's the world chess champion for a reason. So g5. Once you see it, it's obvious, but it's not that obvious to think of from afar, at least for a candidate master, like a mere mortal like me. So rook c1, Gukesh did not go for this, for the equality. Instead, he made a mistake. And Ding is already better, g5. This was the mistake, and you can see by the eval bar that the engine screams that black is significantly better. Minus 0.4, like a pleasant advantage. Because knight h5, now attacks this bishop, the bishop drops back, and now there are a couple of good moves. One of them has been made by Din, rook h8. So the rook has spent 2 tempi moving back and forth, but now it's not needed on, it's no longer needed on the g file. The g file is closed and it will not open anytime soon. But the h file is open, and this bishop is a little bit soft here. Not feeling too great. Now the knight can rotate like here, and the bishop will be hanging, and black is better. f3 has an idea of going e4, trying still to do something about this bishop. But the bishop can, of course, drop back currently, and this is one of the moves that's proposed, suggested by the engine. Another one is knight g7, as I already said, putting pressure on this bishop, making it move yet again. So this was one of the ideas. So after f3, with the idea of e4, what did Din do? Knight g7, bishop g3, as I said, and rook h5. And now a series of strange things starts to happen. Are you with me, guys? This is some madness. Maybe it doesn't look like that, it's just chess, some pieces, pawns, but if you look closely, you will see some crazy stuff going on. So the rook is attacking this pawn, and it looks like a logical move, rook h5. If you remember, in one of the previous games, rook h4 was the recommendation of the engine. So sometimes these moves by the rook happen, even though they look clumsy. But instead of rook h5, it was much better to put the knight, for example, on h5, by the way. Also a good move to even go back, pressuring against this bishop. But it's not like a logically looking move. Bishop p7 developing is much more logical. Putting pressure like this, developing. Rook h5 does not work because of e4. The idea that Gukesh very obviously wanted to implement. Had he played bishop here, then e4 would not be possible, because you can just take, and nothing will happen to the bishop. If you attack the bishop, I can take on d2 and take on b3. Now this knight is no longer alive to protect this pawn. So that was the difference. Attacking the g5 pawn with the bishop served the purpose of attacking this bishop, this knight, which in turn was defending this pawn. So it's not like extremely easy to find this move, but it is possible. But Din somehow mixed it up, went rook h5, and completely forgot about this bishop. You remember, like, saving Private Ryan. Everybody was trying to save him. All these moves back were made to save this c2 bishop. He first went h5 to open up files, to create some distractions for white to react to instead of hunting the bishop. Then he went take, rook g8 to go g5 and free this bishop, remember? And then he forgot about the bishop. It's like a tragic fate. I don't know, he forgot about religion. No bishops. He did not like them. So he went knight g7, good move, but then rook h5, completely neglected e4. And now the bishop is in trouble. He goes takes, knight e6, and white is already much better, +1. You know why? Because this bishop has no moves. All the squares are controlled by enemy's pieces. So, yes, this pawn is hanging, but Gukesh has calculated correctly that he can go rook c1 nonetheless, attacking the bishop. Knight d4 takes the pawn and defends the bishop, but you can attack the knight. Bishop f2, dropping back, also strengthening this pawn. Okay, bishop g7 defends the knight, and if you take the knight, then the bishop would attack the rook on g1. So taking on d4 is not good, but you don't have to take on d4. Here Gukesh finds another brilliant move. Well, maybe not brilliant, but a great one. Knight e2. By the way, backwards knights moves are considered to be trickiest to find in chess, but he found it. So the idea is that the knight has to stay guarding this bishop, but it cannot. It cannot stay guarding. If you take, I just take back. And the bishop, again, is trapped, is entombed. It will have to sack itself for a pawn. And yeah, being a piece up is fine, especially in a World Chess Championship. And in addition, your rook is hanging, by the way, in this position. So yeah, very unpleasant position after knight e2, this crazy backwards knight move. And it's not very difficult. I think I could have found it. This is not like the... You have to, of course, see the concept, but if you see it, you make this move automatically. And I'm sure that Dean saw this move. He just did not see how he could prevent this, because his bishop is already trapped. What to do here? He took this pawn. At least he decided, I'll take a couple of pawns, because the bishop is not going out anytime soon. And the engine agrees. Knight takes d4 is the best move. After bishop f2, well, bishop g7 is one of the best moves. Actually, bishop c5 also was possible, but then again, knight e2 with the same idea. So it's hard to do something in this position if you're Dean. You realize that you are going to be down a piece. So he sacks the knight for one pawn, and we get to this position. Now a quick quiz. Which move would you make here? Rook takes d2 or king takes d2? There's only one good solution. One gives you like a winning advantage. The other gives you like a significant advantage, but not a winning one. So counterintuitively, for many people, king takes d2 is the best move. Close to a bone cloud, you know, this idea. Why? Because if you take by the rook, knight e5 is very unpleasant. It's threatening the royal fork. And if you go knight e4 to defend c5, and you are in trouble. The position is close to equal already. So you have to take by the king, which Gukesh of course saw. And now, after knight e5, again threatening a fork, a royal fork, you can go knight d4. And now c5 is impossible, because the rook is here. So this is the difference. The rook did not take. So the rook is guarding the c5 square. This is the difference. Tricky stuff. And now, rook d8 reinstates the threat of the royal fork, knight f3, because the knight on d4 is pinned now. But he just calmly sidesteps to e2. Note that he sidesteps to e2, not e3, which would be my, for example, initial reaction, because here there is some tactics. Takes, now discovered double check, very interesting, and a fork. Now he can take, and rook h1 is the engine line, and somehow you cannot preserve the material here. You can go rook g2, but then bishop takes b2. And if you take here, I take here. And it's close to a draw already, because black has 3 pawns for the piece and, well, very good drawing chances. Even winning chances, because these 3 pawns will march down the board. So it's very tricky in this position. It's not so easy to win this, even though you are up a piece with white being Gukesh. So king e3, an automatic move, create some chaos on the board. You don't need chaos on the board when you are up a piece. You need to simplify and just win the game. Sign the score sheets, go home. This is what my coach, my grandmaster coach, Farukh Amanatov, always tells me. Like, I like to go for some chaos on the board in chess. He says, if you are like up a pawn, or up a piece especially, you do not need any chaos. Avoid any complications. Hikaru likes to say this on his streams. Like, when he has a good position, he says, okay, no nonsense, I will not go into complications. So you should adopt the approach used by the top players. And Gukesh is one of the top players. One of the best players in the world, maybe the future world chess champion. And he goes king e2. Finally, the king is bone clouded. Maybe a little bit too late, but still. Okay, so now this doesn't work, because I just take with the knight, bishop. So rook h2. Again, he's trying to go for some shenanigans, some pins. But just bishop g2. Now there is no more a pin, and the bishop is guarding this. And everything is easy peasy, a lemon squeezy. A6. Now Gukesh, Dean, look at his clock. 11 minutes. He has 11 minutes to make 12 moves. Which is difficult, you know, especially if you are in a losing position. But even if he had like an hour or 2 hours, I don't think that it would have helped significantly, but at least it would have made his task a bit easier, because like it's still a losing position, but you can find some tricky lines, you can pose more challenges. But he still is the reigning world chess champion, so he will not go down without a fight. b3 is the move chosen by white. Very good prophylactical move. b3 like serves many purposes. First of all, this pawn will not get hanging in any variations. Second of all, it's controlling these squares. Maybe it will be useful in future. So decent move. You don't have to rush. You know, the Latins have the like the ancient Romans in Latin have the phrase festina lente. It means in English hurry up but slowly. So a paradox, an oxymoron. So it means like two incompatible things. Festina lente, hurry up but slowly. So he's not hurrying up, or at least he's like he's doing it slowly, if you know what I mean. So he's not in a rush. He doesn't have to do anything too fast. And in addition, he has a half an hour on his clock. Rook d7. Liren is just making some moves, like standing idly, not wanting to do anything because he wants to build a fortress probably. But his position, of course, is losing. And slowly white consolidates. You see this move, very classy move. Rook back to c1. Just sidestepping any nonsense, doubling the rooks. The rooks now see each other. It's always a good thing. Maybe he wants to go here to trade some pieces. He's up material. He is not in a rush. King e7, just a waiting move. Rook d1. You see this slow maneuver like Pac-Man by the rook. One square. Probably Gukesh forgot how the rook moves. He vaguely remembered that it moves like upwards and backwards and sideways, but he forgot that it can move further than one square. Obviously, I'm joking. So the king, in turn, Gukesh's king, Ding's king, is making the same maneuvers. He's just waiting. And he has just 2 minutes on his clock to make the remaining 9 moves, which is scary. Bishop g3. Nice move. He is kicking the rook away. The rook has to drop back. And of course, you can trade the bishop for the knight, but then this knight will be unopposed, and it's not a good decision, even though that would be also winning. Instead, he wants to trade the knight for the knight to retain the 2 bishops advantage. And he also wants to trade the rooks. Takes with the king. The king is very active in endgames, it's important. And you may say, what if black takes this pawn? Well, black could take this pawn, but it's devastating. Takes. Now rook d1 check. The king has really no good squares to go to. If it goes here, then we have bishop h3 check. It's almost a checkmate, so you have to block with f5, but then you can just take and go king f4, and it's losing. So Liren didn't have time to calculate these variations, but he obviously felt that it's too dangerous, and he did not take this pawn. Instead, he went bishop d4, trying to avoid the trade of these rooks, because the more pieces you trade, the closer you get to a losing endgame here. Rook h1, and Gukesh wants to trade. He is not in a rush. He wants to trade the pieces and win this game. And here, again, black can take this pawn, but it's very risky. Here, Liren, having 1 minute on the clock, decided, okay, I'll take this. I'll take this pawn. And he thought for practically all this remaining minute. He has now 9 seconds on the clock to make 4 moves. 4 moves in 9 seconds. Well, it's realistic, but will there be good moves? I don't know. Bishop h3, great move, attacking the rook. And now there's a problem, because if the rook drops to d8, bishop h4 wins one of the rooks. If the rook goes here, it gets taken. If the rook goes here, the bishop hangs. So there are no ways to move the rook. So you have to go f5, blocking this bishop. But unfortunately, this loses because now the other rook gets harassed. Bishop h4. This is the power of the 2 bishops. They control many squares. 2 bishops are better than 1. And yeah, you can do nothing here for black. Din made this move with 5 seconds on the clock, and he resigned because he saw, obviously, once he made this move, the winning tactic for white. Can you find this tactic? Pause the video if you want to do this. 1, 2, 3. Bishop takes f5. And it's over, lights out. Because if you take my rook, I'll take yours with check. And then I'll take this one, and I'm up a rook. And if you take my bishop, I take your rook. So anything wins here. Actually, you don't even have to go bishop takes f5. Other moves also retain significant advantage, but bishop takes f5 is flash, and it's a great finish. And you know why this game is so weird? Because you rarely see like this many mistakes in a World Chess Championship game, and you rarely see someone so sad in a World Chess Championship match, so anxious. I was watching the broadcast, and Dean was very red. He was puffing. He used water. Probably went to the restroom. He used water to calm himself down. Probably, I don't know. But we saw, everybody who was watching saw that he's not in a great place like currently. After game one, everybody saw that Dean is back. King Dean is back. I thought that the match is now equal. But after this game, I don't see how Dean can win this match, honestly. I think he will collapse in upcoming games. It doesn't mean that he will like lose all the games. Probably there will be many draws, but I think that Gukesh will win by a big margin. This is my prediction. We will see what happens, but still it's going to be an interesting match. I hope that Dean can come back after this and at least put up a fight. What's your opinion? Write it in the comments, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.